update. If you haven't watched the other videos, you might want to, because it's kind of a, at least the other quail experiment videos, because it's kind of a progression, and it builds on itself here. So some things I say may not make sense, especially later on in these later sections of the experiment. So we actually had 3 quail that weren't doing so hot. One just was hatched out weak by itself. 2 I had to help out. One of the 2, just for a really quick summary, was nothing seemed to be wrong with it. It wasn't breached, it was just weak. The other one, very, very strong, fighting like a soldier to get out of that egg, but was breached and stuck. That one has survived. It is now about a week old. The other 2, sadly, were just born weak and did not make it. So today, that little chick is a good 2 days younger than the rest of these chicks. We have one little brown one that's about a day younger than most of the rest of these chicks, hatched out later. And then we have that little silvery chick that is literally, 2 days younger. It's no surprise that that one is slightly smaller than most of the rest of these chicks. That's totally normal. Acting normal, normal energy, eating, drinking good. So we have some great high hopes for that one, which is good. I wasn't sure if we would. So, I talked about in the other videos, you may want to reference this because I don't have time to go through the entire process of it. That would just take too long. We're giving the quail antibodies in egg yolk, and also a natural herbal supplement that is safe for quail for this little chicken cold that we have that sadly just circulates. Once it was brought here, I tried everything to get rid of it, couldn't get rid of it. So these quail were not born here. This little one chicken that hatched out by itself has loved the company of these quail, and the quail have accepted her wonderfully. She hatched out from our own hens and roosters, so she has natural immunity. The quail do not, because they were not born here. So basically, we have this cold that we're watching. Now that they're a week old, they tend to show signs about 5 to 10, maybe 5 to 12 days after being exposed to it. So that's normal, that we see a little bit of symptoms. But really, as far as what I've heard from how bad it could be with a tiny little cold for chickens, could be fatal for a quail, just because they tend to be less immune to stuff like that than chickens and other fowl. They seem to be taking this no harder than a regular, strong, healthy chicken, which is great. You can see, maybe in the video, maybe not, it's very subtle, that they are breathing a little faster than normal, but there's not labored breathing, they're not coughing, they're not hacking up a lung. I haven't even seen any of them sneeze. So that's good signs, but it's too early to tell for sure if these guys are gonna have a sudden turn for the worst, or if they're gonna be just like the chickens, and it's gonna be just a little cold that they get over with within a week from now. So we'll have to see, but right now it's looking pretty good. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, we have eggs, another set of quail eggs in the brooder. We are doing this on purpose. Yes, we could have raised them all together, but I want to test to see, do quail accept a newer generation? Many people say that it cannot be done in chickens, just like they say it cannot be done in quail. But I found for our chickens, it depends on 2 things. It depends on the breed of chicken, it depends on the personality of the individual chickens, and it depends on simply the ratio. Are you introducing one new chicken? or you are introducing, you know, a good clutch of baby chicks, they say that it's better if you can introduce several instead of just 2 or 3, you know, 6 to 12 at a time, so that your flock can be, especially in a free range environment. That's another thing. Most people keep them in tiny little cages where they barely have room to move around. Of course they are going to get stir crazy. Of course they're going to get territorial in there. They don't have space. Also, most people keep too many roosters per hens for quail and chickens. We give our roosters up to 2 times more hens than recommended. We expect that if we do the same with quail, that the quail will not tend to fight that much as far as fighting over hens go. However, that is not going to tell us whether or not they accept new generations. So, get rid of anybody that is a bully. Anybody. We're going to pick the nicest, sweetest roosters instead of the biggest or the fanciest. The main priority is the temperament. And again, we're going to give our quail more hens than they could possibly ever need. Yes, that means that fertility may go down when you're collecting eggs, but it's worth it to us to have a nice flock that can just kind of coexist with each other. So we have this that is probably this batch that's probably 2 weeks older than the eggs that are going to hatch out roughly within a week. If they grow like they've been growing, we'll probably have to wait to introduce them because if they get too much size difference, those little teeny tiny baby quail, they're just too fragile. So we would probably wait until they are both batches are adults, and at that time we will release both batches at the same time into a totally new environment. That's another thing that tends to help, either rearranging the same environment or new environment. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that we would put them at that time when they're nearly full grown or totally full grown, when we would put them in the free range environment anyway. So that is going to be probably the time that we integrate these two, when they're already ready to go into free range and are out of the brooders. So right now we're waiting on a few things. We're waiting on, you know, is this little chicken cold going to be little to the quail? We're waiting on the quail to get old enough to go out into the chicken yard. We're waiting to see, once they do go out, whether or not they stay there. So actually our very first release into the free range environment is going to be probably not our entire flock. What I plan to do is I plan to release some extra roosters, perhaps the more aggressive roosters, just as a test, just to see, are they going to be all right? Can they survive Welly? Can they find their way back home? So that's going to be, you know, our initial test before the test. Those roosters will be, you know, they would end up being somebody's dinner anyway. So it's worth it to not put an entire batch of quail out there, much less both. It's worth it for the first time just to see how they're going to react, how they're going to do. And then once we see how they do, then we can introduce everybody else into the free range environment, which is going to be at least 4 to 6 weeks from now. So we got a while. I have been, every single time I feed them, I have been giving them the command cookies, because when we put them out in the chicken yard, their reward is going to be a little bit more enticing than just regular food that's already sitting there. Their reward is going to be treats. So I'm using the word cookies, even though right now this is just food. They will eventually associate it once they get old enough to where we can give them some mealworms and things. they will associate it with something even better than food. But right now, again, they're a little too young for that. So even though it's just food, it's the same idea. They know that they're getting fresh food every time I say cookies, and you know, so they're learning that. They actually right now don't really care because they have huge full bellies. They're not paying attention to me. They're falling asleep after their huge meal this morning. So they're not paying attention to what I'm saying right now, and even so, they haven't totally learned that word yet. That'll be a while. What I have noticed is that they already look to me, which chickens don't usually, they're not this attentive. The quail already start looking to me the moment I open the shed to the door each morning when I give them their first meal. They are already going up to my hand before I even put the dish down, before I totally get the word cookies out. Sometimes they're already going up to my hand. So right now they're paying a little more attention to hand equals food. Later, I hope that they will associate the word, like people have said that are possible for quail to be trained that way, which I don't doubt. They're very smart animals, a lot smarter than people give them credit for. So we'll check back in a week or so and see how they're doing then.